Hi there, you guys. It's me, Roux, and welcome to my new video segment, CrimeLime, where we talk about true crime. Why is it called CrimeLime? It's because it rhymes and I found it appealing. Also because I found some dope lime clip art. And true crime was taken, so CrimeLime with Roux it is. I am a huge fan of true crime. Huge fan! Not of it happening, of course, but like listening to and watching videos about it. I just find that morbidly fascinating. Learning why people do the things they do, what kind of behavioral problems they have, and just looking into cases and, learning from it. Really interesting. Kendall Ray is my absolute favorite. Her videos on true crime are amazing. Also, Murder with Friends. Oh, I wish that segment had continued. But yeah, since I enjoy it so much, I thought maybe I should try making my own. And why not start with a serial killer that's very unknown and from the area I'm from, not far from where I'm sitting right now, which is in the middle of Norway in a small town called Orkdal. This happened in the 70s, and it was a super small town with only about 9,500 people. Not really where you'd think a serial killer would have a crime spree, but that's exactly what happened. Starting in 1977, in the local old folks' home, a string of mysterious deaths started occurring. Now, these people were old and some of them were ill, but it was still mysterious and suspicious because even though they were old and maybe sick, they weren't dying per se. And people started to get really suspicious of the new head of the facility, a nurse named Arnfinn Nesset. Now, Arnfinn Nesset was described as very talented in his field as a nurse in healthcare, but also a loner who didn't really seek out human interaction. Like, he kept to himself and he was, seen as the oddball, kind of harmless oddball. And for the most, he was. Harmless oddball. That is unless you were so unfortunate to be elderly and sick in his care. Now, some people might say, oh, maybe he was an angel of death, someone who comes in and relieves people who are sick, suffering, who actually want to die. That's not what he did. Because what he did is chemically choke them to death with a potent muscle relaxant that you give people when they're going under anesthesia and they need a breathing machine to breathe. But he didn't give them a breathing machine, so he literally choked them to death, chemically. And he didn't do it because he was so merciful. He did it because it gave him a thrill, which he was oh so happy to talk about when he talked to the detectives when he was arrested in 1981. That's right, he started in 1977, and he kept going until 1981. Now, people had been suspicious of this guy for a long time, but they couldn't really prove it. So, as much as 60 suspicious deaths were investigated. And even though he knew that he was under suspicion and that people were onto him, he just kept on killing. Other medical staff who worked at the old folks' home would be in the room with a patient and check their vitals, and the patient would be completely fine, completely normal. Then they would leave the room, and minutes later, that patient would have a medical emergency. And guess who they kept finding in the rooms of these patients who seemed completely fine minutes before, but then suddenly had a medical emergency? Yeah, Arnfinn Nesset. Now, once if this happens, it's like, oh, that's just sad and unfortunate, right? Second time it happens, that's an odd coincidence. The third time it happens, Nah, it's getting creepy, isn't it? Yeah, people were really suspicious of him. That must be so horrifying, though, knowing that you're working with someone who's probably killing people, but you can't prove it. And he's the boss of the place, so you can't really do anything about it. Also, he got more and more ballsy. There were instances where he would call the relatives of whatever patient he was planning on murdering. Tell the relatives that they really had to get down there because their loved one was having a medical emergency. And it was life and death and they really had to hurry. So of course the relatives would hurry down there, only to find that their loved one had just passed away or they passed away just as they arrived. So he literally timed it so that he could feed off of seeing people lose a loved one. So apparently it wasn't enough for him anymore to watch people die. He also needed to feed off of watching people lose a loved one. Just sick and twisted. Now, when he was arrested, he sang like a canary. He was just like, this is what I did, this is all the people I killed, this is how I did it. And when they asked him why, he was just like, oh, it gave me such a thrill, like just seeing them like die and knowing that I was injecting death into them, I loved it. When they tried to determine whether or not he had felt any guilt for what he had done, he showed none. Literally, he had been killing people and watching them die, but he showed no remorse or he didn't feel bad about it at all. Like, he just felt like they deserved to die. And his remorselessness was really emphasized when they went to his house and searched it and they found just a stash of Curacet, the muscle relaxant he used to kill people with. And just to put it in perspective, that is not a drug that you will ever need in an old folks' home. So he had gone out of his way to get this drug, probably illegally, hoarded it, and he was just, not gonna stop until someone stopped him. He was on a roll. Now, when they asked him why he did it, all of a sudden, he didn't want to talk anymore. He was described as a really careful guy. Like, he didn't want people to know things about him. Like, he didn't want them to analyze him. He wanted to be in control. Like, that's just him. Seems like he wanted to be in control, just like he wanted to be in control when he killed people, and he didn't want the detectives and the psychologists and stuff to know things about him and to be able to figure him out. All in all, he confessed to 27 murders, something he later revoked, though. He was just like, oh, you're gonna take me to trial, actually I didn't do it at all, oops, silly me. But that didn't work. People saw right through him. And even though he was very uncooperative into letting forensic psychologists know oh, what is this guy about, when they were trying to figure out whether or not he was insane, which he was deemed not to be, he was very much not insane. He was fully aware what he was doing. He was very intelligent, and he was just a remorseless, smart guy. Just a narcissistic sociopath type of dude. But they never formally diagnosed him with such a disorder, even though they said that he had some sort of personality disorder, because he just refused to work with them. He refused to let them in on who he was. Just clammed up. During the trial, he really showcased what an unpleasant person he was underneath his facade. He was really arrogant, really indignant, really just seemed annoyed and offended that they would even question him or put him in his place. I think he liked to have control, and he didn't like to be put in his place and to be treated as if he's not the smartest person in the room or like he's not in control. People have come out later and said that if you were alone with him and you were in a conversation with him and you did something that he didn't like or disagreed with him, he could be really malicious, have this really aggressive, angry, all of a sudden it was a different person than he would display to everyone else when he was around more than one person, And a lot of people suspect that this is the kind of mannerisms that he had when he was alone with his patients, especially the ones he was going to kill. I don't know if anyone actually reported him, any of the patients that didn't die or before they died, but even if they did, maybe people didn't believe them, Maybe they were like, oh, this person has dementia, has Alzheimer's, they don't know what's going on. And Arnfinn seems so nice, he couldn't possibly be this horrible, aggressive, malicious person. That's just ridiculous. And then it turns out he is all those things, and he was actually killing people. So, if anyone did report him, it was a huge mistake to just brush that off as being like, oh, old people just make things up. People should take that more seriously, I think that's really a big problem in old folks' homes, that a lot of people get away with treating elderly people really horribly, and no one really believes the old people, like, oh, you're being over dramatic. Like, they treat them as if, like, oh, you're just making things up. And I think that's a big problem, that was really highlighted by this case. And the fact that he seemed so annoyed in the court really underlines why I think he is a full-blown narcissist. I also think he's a sociopath, but narcissists don't like being told that they're not the center of the universe. They don't like being held accountable for things. They don't like, how dare you question me, how dare you, because they think they're better than everyone else, and everyone's beneath them, and yeah, just malicious, Now, no one believed him, of course, when he was just like, actually, I didn't do it. And he was sentenced to Norway's harshest punishment, 21 years in prison. He was actually only convicted of 22 deaths. I guess after he withdrew his confessions, they could only convict him of what they could prove. But a lot of people suspect that he killed a lot more people. Now, here's the thing. People have been sentenced to 21 years in prison, but not been released. Because after your 21 years, when you've served them, they evaluate you to see if you've been rehabilitated and if you're a danger to society or not. Now, as probably a sociopath, which he probably is, I can imagine that he was really good at playing by the rules. He's described as, a model prisoner and stuff like that, and he did get out after 21 years. And he is currently very much alive, and he's living out his best life, ironically enough, as an elderly man. I wonder how he feels being an old man now, because he is now the victim demographic that he was targeting. I wonder if he thinks to himself, ooh, I'm old, I should die, or if he's just like, no, I'm different. I wonder if he can even put himself in other people's shoes. I wonder if he has that capacity. I mean, he did kill a bunch of people without any remorse, so I'm guessing not. Now, people may say, why did he hate elderly people so much? Turns out that when he was a child, he was forced to care for his elderly grandmother, who was sick, and they suspect that he didn't have a lot of empathy towards her, if he's a sociopath, and that he was pretty resentful of the fact that she didn't just up and die so that he didn't have to take care of her, and that whenever he worked at the old folks' home and saw elderly people who were sick, it literally made him want to kill them all. So he wasn't a dangerous man, except to the old and sick. Now, personally, I wonder, is he a danger to society? I think probably not, because I think a lot of people who have the personality disorder that he has, he's probably full-blown sociopath, narcissistic. They're very good at playing by the rules to get what they want. So I don't think that he's changed his tune. People are like, oh, he's so much nicer now. He takes part in social work. Yeah, that's probably what he does. Probably to make people think he's such a nice guy, just so that they're like, oh, he's changed. I doubt that's the case, though. I think people like that just do things like that so that they can be like, yeah, I'm a nice person, look at me. Just so that they can be free, because it serves them better to not be in prison, So I don't think he's a danger to society, but I don't think it's for the right reasons. I think he's self-servingly not a danger to society. Although a very valid case can be made that whenever he goes into elderly care, like a retirement home, if he ever goes to live in one, they would have to monitor him pretty closely. I think there would be a very valid concern that he might slip into his old habits and maybe inflict some of his terror on his roommates. You never know, it could trigger him to want to kill again, live out the good old days if he's ever in an old folks' home again. What do you think? Do you think the Norwegian justice system is too lenient? Do you think he should still be in prison? The crazy thing is, yeah, he was convicted to 21 years, the maximum sentence, but he was convicted of 22 deaths. and suspected of killing a hell of a lot more, so he didn't even get 1 year per murder. Well, that doesn't seem very fair, especially to the people left behind of all the people he murdered. Although I'm all for the whole rehabilitation and stuff, I just don't think that sociopathic people should just be able to con themselves out of the system and be like, oh yeah, I served my time, I'm all good now. Like, if you have that personality disorder, I don't think you can be cured from it. Not really, no. Oh, and I almost forgot to include this bit, but this is juicy. There was a documentary by a Norwegian TV channel that was just aired about Arnfinn Nesset. I hated the documentary, by the way. They were harassing jurors. Not smooth and not okay. But in the documentary, it was revealed that people viewed him as being so harmless that professionals were just like, yeah, we don't even believe he did it, because he's just so nice and harmless. No matter how many people came out and was like, actually, when you're alone with him and you're vulnerable, he's aggressive AF. They were just like, no, he couldn't have possibly done it. He seems so nice. And the crazy part about this is, after the trial, he hires himself a new lawyer because apparently the old lawyer knows too much, is what I'm thinking. And he hires himself a new lawyer, and this lawyer is like, oh my god, he's just so nice. And the lawyer manages to get him out of prison for a weekend to celebrate the lawyer's birthday. So he got a convicted serial killer at a prison to attend his birthday party. Quote, it seemed like all of the guests had a great time. He was so nice. He really needed a break, He was in there for 2 years. Yeah, he'd only been in prison for 2 years. And his lawyer's just like, he seems like he needs, to come to my birthday party? What? Insane. I just think that goes to prove how manipulative that man is. And that those professionals shouldn't be professionals because, damn, you should be able to spot people manipulating you from a mile away. You shouldn't be working in this field. Holy shit. I hope you found that case interesting and that you want to hear more CrimeLime. If you do, remember to subscribe, leave a like, and do comment below what other cases do you want me to cover in this new series. Thank you so much to my wonderful patrons, Katbra, Madayana Yavurska, Ono Balloons, and Ellie. You make this possible. If anyone's interested in supporting this new series, there's a link below. Don't forget to join me next Wednesday when we delve into the case of the Blanchards. Extreme Munchausen by proxy.